Well, the president just tweeted out of the blue this weekend that former President Barack Obama, when he was president and our current President Trump was still campaigning, that President Obama had ordered a wiretap of his phones. Is that true? So far, we have no actual evidence of that being true. So I wanted to welcome back to the show our friend Dr. Gleb Tsipursky from Intentional Insights. Gleb, good to talk to you.
Thank you, Ethan. And I feel like we're old friends. I've been on the show for something like 7 or 8 times, and it's a pleasure to be back again.
Always good to talk to you. And by the way, this article is great, How Behavioral Science Can Help Truth Triumph Over Baseless Accusations. By the way, I just, not to toot my own horn, but to say that we speak the same language on this topic for the most part. In my book that I wrote called Liars and Whores, How Big Government and Big Business Are Working to Save Their Own Assets, not yours, you have a piece in this article that talks about 41% of Americans go beyond simply skimming the headline. Only 41% do. This is exactly what I talked about, is we don't read past headlines, so Trump gets away with saying things like, Obama wiretapped my phones, and nobody checks them on it. They just 41%. I mean, only 41% people read beyond it. That's how his base continues to get fed when he tweets stuff like that, isn't it?
That is totally the case. But who is to blame for it? You know, we can't change Trump. What we can do, as I discussed in the article, is we can change the way that we cover things. We can change the nature of the headlines. For example, the headline for the AP News story about this was that Trump makes accusations about Obama wiretapping Trump without providing any evidence. Now, what if we change the headline to say Trump makes another accusation without any evidence, this time targeting Obama? The first headline causes people to remember and have an association with Trump being a victim who is wiretapped. The second headline focuses on Trump making baseless accusations. Both of the headlines describe the same thing, but the second headline disincentivizes Trump from making these sorts of accusations because he's smart. He knows that most people don't actually read the paper. They only listen to the headlines. They only read the headlines. And if you have headlines that disincentivize him from making baseless accusations, you'll get somewhere.
Okay, but isn't the challenge the challenge there is trying to convince a media organization who's trying to get hits, right, and entice people in to use a more accurate headline. And let's be honest, they need an audience. It's a for-profit corporation, so they're going to do things as titillating as possible, right? When they do this. So what can we do individually, though? I mean, look. Most of us suffer to varying degrees, some more than others, from confirmation bias that you talk about in the article. So, well, first off, what is confirmation bias? And then secondly, how do we move past having it? Sure.
So confirmation bias is the perspective that our ideological beliefs, it's a thinking error. So I research how our thinking and feeling patterns negatively impact our political engagement, business engagement, and so on. And I'm writing a book about this called Alternatives to Alternative Facts, Fighting Post-Truth Politics with Behavioral Science. Now, confirmation bias is one of these thinking errors, and this thinking error causes us to perceive, when we have strong ideological beliefs, we perceive any new information coming in from the perspective of these ideological beliefs. So basically, people who think that Obama is great will not believe Trump's claims. People who believe that Trump is great and Obama is terrible will believe Trump's claims regardless. But there's a huge chunk of people in the middle, the more moderate, independent people, and even people on the far left or far right who are reason-oriented, truth-oriented, and are able to change their minds based on new evidence. These are the people who can be reached by changing the style of headlines. So that's about confirmation bias. Now, about headlines, I think it's a great question. And right now, many people in the media are really trying to figure out how to deal with Trump. So you're right that each individual media company, organization they're for-profit, they want money, they want to have titillating headlines, but together, all of them are suffering from Trump. Trust in the mainstream media dropped among Republicans by more than half from 2015 to 2016. And that's because of the Trump effect. That is largely due to Trump. It's in the low teens right now. Well, if they don't trust mainstream media, they're not going to be buying newspapers. They're not going to be listening to TV and radio if they don't trust the media. All the media organizations are hurt by this sort of lack of trust.
But Gleb,
and if you have headlines, yes.
Hang on, though. There's a critical fact, though, that matters in all of this, right? I mean, so facts really do matter. CNN just announced last week that because, basically, of Trump, they are on pace to make as much money in so typically after an election, the numbers go way down for media because, it's the buildup to the election. They're saying their numbers are staying every bit as high as if it's 2 weeks before the election, and they're going to report record revenue and profits this year because of Trump. So so there is one kind of counterfactual point there, which is CNN's not suffering at all. They're actually making a ton of money out of this.
Right, CNN is. But a lot of newspapers are suffering. So a lot of papers that, if we remember back to when a number of papers that were previously have chosen Republican candidates for president, when they said that they are not endorsing Trump, their subscription numbers dropped drastically. Kind of a number of people who were previously loyal subscribers stopped subscribing to them, stopped buying the papers because of this distrust of the mainstream media among Trump supporters. And when those papers opposed Trump, they were hurt by it. So Trump overall is undermining media, the fourth estate, people like you, as an institution. He is really harming everyone in the media as an institution, as a group. And this is why it's really wise for the media as a whole to change its approach to covering Trump, which is what I talk about in the article. Now, you asked what people, like ordinary people who are listening to the station, can do. And what they can do is when they see media coverage that focuses on Trump, when they have a headline that says Trump makes this accusation, what they can write to the editor, they can write a letter to the editor and say, hey, why do you have a headline that's frontlining the actual accusation that Trump made as opposed to Trump's pattern of baseless accusations?
I see. So if we use our voice where our wallet is being used to follow up, that is a way for influence. Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, the website is intentionalinsights.org. Gleb, we'll talk again soon. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much, Ethan. It was a pleasure as usual.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.